I'm Claire Benton, and I'm 34. I'm standing under bright stage lights in a packed conference hall, velvet ropes, cameras, the low hum of people waiting for something to happen. The host's microphone crackles. An investigative reporter in the front row lifts her recorder and asks, "Are you the mystery leader behind the fund everyone's been whispering about?" My sister's fiancé sits a few rows back, arms crossed, watching me like I'm a math problem he hasn't solved. The room goes quiet, even the event producer at the wings freezes. The award envelope in my hand suddenly weighs 100 pounds. I breathe in, feel the pearls on my throat, and decide in the space between breaths that I won't hide anymore. Before I tell you why I was on that stage and how a family wedding turned into the cleanest revenge I ever planned, tell me where you're listening from, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I read every comment and I want to know your corner of the world. The text arrives while I'm tucked into a corner booth at Rosa's Corner, the trattoria with chipped mugs and a playlist that leans toward old jazz. The light by the window makes the steam from my coffee glow. My phone buzzes on the table, Sloane's name flashes across the screen. She sends a message with a mood board, pale gowns, glossy smiles, the kind of faces that have been Photoshop smoothed into a single look. The words underneath are flat, "You don't fit the look. No please, no question, just an order dressed up as taste." I stare at the pearls in my dish, at my old hybrid parked outside like a patient, honest dog. I think of the seam at the back of my favorite sweater, the one I always tug straight when I'm nervous. A second message follows. It's not personal, it's just our brand. She's already decided which part of the family can shine and which part should sit quietly in the dark. The voice on the other end of the phone is the kind that measures people in inches of runway, not in any currency I care about. I don't reply. I screenshot the messages, slide my phone face down, and let the noise of Rosa's fill the hollow that the text left. Rosa drops a plate of ziti and jokes that I look like I need more garlic. I smile, grateful for the ordinary. Inside me, something wakes that isn't surprise, just the old, steady burn of being told to make myself smaller. I push my napkin up, smooth my hair, and the decision lands like a small stone. If she wants me smaller, I'll show her how big I can be. I open my laptop and type a calendar entry like it's a knife. Meeting, Chairwoman Benton and groom-to-be. The title is a weight I don't usually carry in public. I don't sign as Claire, I sign as the role I inhabit when I cut through fluff and look at numbers and people honestly. I route the invite through Julie, my chief of staff, using the formal title I've kept in a drawer for years. The subject line is plain: prospective allocation review confidential. No bells, no begging, impossible to ignore. My heartbeat settles into something purposeful. I pay for my espresso in cash, leave a tip that's more than usual, and tell Rosa I'll be back. I text Daniel, my CFO, a short message, pull the hotel parent info and upcoming renovation windows. No explanation, just a task. Julie replies with a string of emojis that mean she understands the mood and the mission. I'm done asking to be in rooms I quietly built. The thought feels like a small, private laugh at the back of my throat. He accepts the meeting in less than 5 minutes, eager, polished, quick. His assistant writes back with an exclamation point. Excited to explore the upside together, I sit with that phrasing like it's a challenge. I message an advisor who answers to his first name only in our texts. We're moving earlier than planned. You okay? He sends back, you have the wheel. That 3-word reply steadies me in a way therapy never did. I ask Julie to pull public records on the hotel brand's parent company to flag renovation blocks and seasonal gaps. I send a note to Nina, the director of the arts charity Sloane loves. Anonymous donor, no naming rights, use it where it helps kids who don't have access. I book a flight to Milan for an awards night I may now actually attend. I also put an offer down on Rosa's Corner, just enough to keep Rosa in charge and rents steady. No rebranding, no improvements that mean losing the sauce. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's a set of small moves that add up to leverage. I'm not angry in the way that screams. I'm precise, like a hand on a steering wheel. The question at the edge of my planning notebook is blunt. Will I keep the peace or let the truth set the table? For the first time in a long time, I feel the honest answer settle into me. It's time the truth set the table. Outside of any newsroom or glossy profile, I wear the life I choose like a comfortable coat. My clothes are simple jeans that have a soft place at the knee, cardigans that hide the suit I could wear if I wanted to. My hybrid has a dented bumper and a parking sticker from a library card I haven't used in a year. It smells faintly of lemon air freshener. I keep my hair in a loose knot that says I teach or volunteer or fix small things. I like being unremarkable on purpose. My apartment has floors that remember shoes and a plant that seems determined to survive despite my neglect. There's a single framed photo of Mom in the kitchen, smiling with flour on her hands from baking. The pearls I inherited from my grandmother live in a little dish by the sink. They match everything and announce almost nothing. Neighbors assume I'm freelancing. They wave in the hallway and I nod and never correct them. The doorman knows my coffee order. He jokes that I always look like I'm running late on purpose. I'm generous with time for school fundraisers and polite to the mail carrier. I answer texts late and never post about charity dinners. It's not a disguise that screams mystery, it's a life that keeps its edges soft. After a childhood where appearances could drown you, where we learned to measure ourselves against other people's blinding light, I built a quiet I could breathe in. Mom used to say, do your work and let your work do the talking. Dad measured worth in what you fixed and who you fed, not who took your picture. This quiet isn't an act of shame, it's a shield and a choice. But wearing it steady for years has left a pocket of me that wants to be seen by the people who counted me out. I like ordinary things, the clink of a spoon in a saucer, the smell of baking bread, the way a simple call home sounds like a small victory. That ordinary is its own kind of currency, and I've decided I'm done letting anyone price me out of it. Julie, my chief of staff, is the other half of that early morning rhythm. She texts 3-word updates while I'm still in pajamas. Board confirmed, Rosa signed, Nina crying. She can finish my sentences and slap the brakes on impulses I haven't noticed yet. We've built systems that run like slow, steady machinery, calls, checks, quiet approvals. No press releases, no staged ribbon cuttings. We set up funds for school roofs and clinic beds for founders who actually pay their staff and don't just promise growth on paper. Money, to me, is a way to clear the air for someone else, not to buy a seat at a party. Our advisory board meets in living rooms and hotel lobbies, off calendar and off the record. We use first names only. We don't take pictures, we don't call attention to ourselves. People on that board show up because they want to do the right thing quietly. They keep their reputations intact and let the work move forward. I like that kind of power, the small kind that makes a furnace run rather than the loud kind that lights fireworks. We've learned to be surgical. If a small town needs a water pump, we find the pump maker and fund the truck that carries it. If a hospital needs beds, we write checks and make sure the beds show up. It's steady, stubborn work. I dislike headlines as much as I dislike being boxed in by them. Attention has a price. I'd rather spend money on people than on my own publicity. That's been our rhythm for 8 years, and it's kept the company breathing even when the markets hiccuped and when people wanted a show instead of a solution. There's a part of me that relishes that busyness because it's honest and useful. And there's a part that's fiercely private, the part that would rather let a school roof get fixed without anyone posting about a donor. It's harder to be generous without wanting recognition, and harder still to stay steady when the family you grew up with prizes stage lighting over quiet service. Julie keeps me honest when the two places collide. Daniel keeps me realistic when my quiet plans begin to rattle. That balance is the operation, the thing that actually runs the empire no one sees. If I need a clear head, I go to Rosa's corner. It's a narrow room with red checkered tablecloths and a neon sign that buzzes like an old friend. ROSACE in small, cheerful letters. The air there always smells like garlic and simmering tomatoes, and the plates arrive with the kind of confidence only a person who has fed a neighborhood for decades can have. The back table under a painting of a fishing boat is mine more often than not. Rosa teases me when I show up with a laptop. "You work too much, kiddo." She slides me a plate and tells me to take a bite before I read emails. She calls me kiddo like she's keeping me younger than I am, and I answer with the kind of grin that belongs to someone who knows they're allowed to be small and messy and loved. I think best there because nothing at Rosa's needs to be defended. Deals have been sketched on its napkins and forgotten by the time the sauce is finished. Rosa never asks what I do, she asks if I want extra basil. She knows when I'm tired and brings me a cup of brodo without asking. Everyone in that room is someone who lives nearby, they remember anniversaries and who's owed a favor. The trattoria is the only place where anonymity feels like a comfort instead of a costume. When the neighborhood faces change, new developers with glossy plans, real estate people who wear suits and hand out brochures, Rosa worries. She talks about rent hikes and concepts that mean losing the corner for the sake of a condo cafe. I pay attention because she's not talking about me, she's talking about the people who sit at the counter and trade small news. I've watched that block change bit by bit. I've seen joints I loved shutter behind coming soon signs. Protecting Rosa's isn't about saving a business. It's about keeping a place where the ordinary feels safe. It's about keeping a patch of the city that resists being polished away. There's a reason I protect that smallness. Mom used to stand by the sink and hum while she folded laundry, and she'd say, without drama, "Do your work and let your work do the talking." Dad measured people by what they repaired and how they kept their promises, not by their silverware or where they went to school. Those two voices are the soundtrack of my life: do it well and don't make a fuss. My sister chose a different hymn. For Sloane, value shows up under chandeliers and in glossy photos. She believes love is something you can post for clocks to count. What I'm missing is permission. I have money, projects, staff who trust me, and results that keep hospitals from overflowing. What I don't have, not really, is the right to be seen by the people who taught me to hide. I keep thinking about how it would feel if Mom were alive to see the programs I quietly funded, if Dad could sit in a training room and watch us improve the way hospitals track beds. Would they clap? Would Sloane? Would the people who think I'm ordinary blink and see me differently? That's not why I do it, but it's why this sharp note in my chest has been getting louder. Hiding has been safe. It's let me avoid the family arguments about money and pride, and it's kept my name out of the social columns. But safety has a cost. It costs me the chance to be whole in front of the people who mattered most when I was small and uncertain. Hiding kept me from being hurt, yes, but it also kept me from being recognized for what I actually built. The thought of being uninvited for being too ordinary feels like a measurement I never agreed to. It's not about the dress code, it's about a definition of worth that my family and their friends keep repeating like a drumbeat. I don't want to spend my life shrinking to make someone else look taller. The video call starts with a tilt of the phone and Sloane's profile framed by racks of fabric. She's in a boutique fitting room, the kind where light is engineered to be flattering and mirrors are generous. Her dress shimmers when she turns. When I answer, she's already smiling in that way that means she's checked off something on a list. She says the venue has strict aesthetic guidelines, and I hear the words like they're a ruler held up to me. "You clash with the look," she tells me, and it lands like a small slap because it's precise and final. She talks about expectations and the Whitmore standard, phrases that sound like measurement tools for people rather than menus. She suggests I sit this one out and send a nice gift instead. It feels like she's arranging a favor, not rejecting a sister. I ask if it's about my clothes or about me. There's a pause that stretches too long. She twirls the dress and doesn't look at the camera. "It's not personal," she says, because that's what people say when they toss a hurt like a kitchen scrap. She hangs up before I can answer. I'm left with the faint smell of her perfume from the phone and the sound of the trattoria around me like a counterpoint. My fingers hover over the screen before I write anything. The invitation I never asked for has been rewritten in someone else's hand. That's the sharp part. The decision didn't come from a stranger or a venue manager, it came from Sloane. She made a choice about how I'd stand in her life and sent it back to me as a favor. I sit for a long time with my coffee cooling, my lunch untouched. Rosa comes over and sets a bowl of bread in front of me like a small peace offering. I eat, but I taste the tilt of family balance shifting. Julie hears the story and says, we can ignore this and keep our routine, or we can respond and accept fallout. Her voice is even, and I know she's mapping risks the way she always does. Daniel reminds me that silence is a choice too, and sometimes staying quiet reads like agreement. I feel the old muscles contract, don't answer, don't escalate, keep the company's work safe. It's a tempting path because it's quiet and it preserves what I already have. But around us, small pieces start to line up like dominoes. The hotel brand's general manager is on my list of notes, Henry, who runs the Marbury, and Julie flags renovation blocks he's mentioned in past conversations. Those blocks could move weekend schedules and push Sloane's plans around without any drama. A reporter has started asking questions about a mystery fund leader and has been polite but persistent. The business feeds the personal now. The lines between our private rules and public consequences blur. I write in my notebook, the same one where I plan projects and sketch ideas, if they can define me out of a room, they can define me out of myself. That sentence sits there blunt and unadorned. It's not a threat, it's a fact I can't ignore. The decision hangs like a light bulb over a kitchen table. Do I let them write the story of who I am, or do I take the pen? There's the obvious appeal to safety. If I don't publicly correct the narrative, nothing explodes. My name stays out of the social feeds, the faces that track people like trophies don't line up to judge me, and we can go on funding useful things without the noise. Julie says this is the strategy that's kept us steady through bumps and booms. Keep the engine running and don't draw attention to internal wiring. Daniel points out that attention brings scrutiny, and scrutiny brings cost in time and energy we could spend on actual work. He's right, the quieter the machine, the less likely it is to get dismantled. Then there's the personal muscle memory, years of shrinking to keep the peace. I can almost feel the old patterns settle in my shoulders. Let it go, send a nice gift, don't trade privacy for pride. My parents taught me to avoid spectacle. Mom called it dignity, Dad called it endurance. There's a comfort in being the person who keeps promises without fuss. It's tempting to tuck the hurt back into that familiar pocket and go on. Sometimes the weight of what I built feels like something I'm allowed to carry alone, not something I need to drag into the light to prove. There's real power in quiet competence, and I've protected that power fiercely. But the quiet choice also nags like a splinter. The words she used, "you don't fit the look," aren't about clothes. They're about who's allowed to be seen, who's allowed to belong, and who's allowed to count in the family ledger. If I let them define me out of a room, I let them define me out of the story of my own life. That matters more than a single party. If I say nothing now, I teach my sister and anyone else watching the easiest lesson. When it's time to choose who matters, pick the shiny one. I don't want the people who rely on us, the hospital staff, the kids who get scholarships, to think we'll bend values for social convenience. There's also the slow pressure of precedent. If I tolerate being excluded for the sake of someone else's image, I'll be sidelined again. Little concessions add up. I picture a future where Sloane expects me to disappear for galas, for board dinners, for any room that threatens her showcase. If I act now, I might stop that pattern from becoming an accepted family chore. The quiet life I've made has been honest, but it's also codependent in a way I never wanted. I built an empire by being practical, not performative, and teaching others to believe in that would be worth the risk of a single weekend. So there are reasons to keep my head down and to lift it up, both with weight. The choice becomes a sort of ledger, peace versus principle, quiet versus the chance to be known by the people who taught me to hide. I circle both lists in my notebook until the ink bleeds marginally together. Neither path promises a painless morning after. Both carry damage and dignity in different measures. The decision is less about winning and more about what kind of person I want to be when someone asks who I am. The window to decide closes faster than I'd like. The groom's assistant asks for pre-reads for the investor meeting, which reads like a desire for a polished sell rather than a real conversation. The family group chat blossoms with dress selfies and seating charts that purposefully exclude me. Henry, the general manager at the Marbury, mentions a renovation block in passing during a logistics call, an easy calendar shuffle that could push Sloane's rehearsal and force dates to move. Rosa's phone buzzes with a developer's card. The words "great price" appear like a small threat. The journalist emails again, polite this time, asking whether I'd comment before she files. The options shrink into 2 lanes. Stay invisible and watch the world adjust around me, or engage and accept that being seen will cost something. Either way, the week ahead isn't going to be calm. I pick a date on my calendar and circle it like an appointment with my own courage. The circle feels like a small defiance. I tell Julie to clear a slot for me in 2 days and to prepare for a meeting I'll name Chairwoman Benton for the first time in public correspondence. I don't say the word revenge. I don't want theatrics. I say instead, we'll be precise. Accepting the meeting is the first hard choice. I ask for the corner conference room with the city view because windows hold people accountable in a way dull walls don't. I tell Julie in a voice I don't always use, no more shadows, we'll keep our rules, but I'm done apologizing for existing. She breathes out like she's been waiting to hear that too. I authorize the anonymous $10 million gift to Nina's arts charity with one clear condition. The funds must go to expanding access for public school students. No plaque, no recognition, just a real opening for kids who don't get served by season tickets and donor lists. I pull a deposit together to buy Rosa's corner and write terms that keep Rosa in charge and rent predictable. I offer enough to lock it down and promise I won't rebrand or raise prices. It's selfish and not, both at once. I also greenlight a year-long partnership that brings 3 of our conferences to the Marbury's parent brand properties, knowing it'll trigger those renovation blocks that make Sloane's weekend harder to pin down. The move is deliberate, it's leverage, not spite. I tell Daniel to set simple rules for any firm that approaches us: transparent numbers, clean records, and no heads-up advantages. If someone wants our business, they play straight. I call Henry and ask for an honest conversation about schedules and staff. He's practical and grateful even before I mention the conferences. He listens, notes that staffing and dates are tight, and says he'll coordinate with us. I tell him we'll cover staff training costs and promise the support will be quiet and practical, no fanfare. He replies, "We'll make sure our team is looked after." His voice sounds relieved, like a man grateful that someone finally offered to fix the messy middle. I tell Julie to draft a brief personal statement just in case Tessa, the journalist, connects more dots than we like. Julie writes in short, clean sentences. She knows I hate long speeches. I pick up my grandmother's pearls and slip them on, the cool weight a small ritual that steadies me. I book the flight to Milan. The award night has become, overnight, a stage not just for an honor but for a choice I've decided to stop postponing. There's a quiet satisfaction that comes with moving deliberately. I'm not trying to make noise for its own sake. I'm arranging facts so that the story people tell about me has to fit the truth, or at least explain why they chose to ignore it. I text the advisor who'd promised support, "I'll be present for the meeting." He replies, "I'll bring what you need." The exchange is efficient and warm, the kind of practical friendship that's held together by shared goals and mutual respect. Everything I set in motion is meant to be calm and surgical. The gift to the arts charity is anonymous but structured. I specify scholarships, open nights, and outreach programs. The conferences are booked with practical details: meeting rooms, AV, staff training, that will make it inconvenient to move around Sloane's weekend without real operational headaches. The Rosa purchase includes a clause that keeps her recipes sacred, ensures staff are kept on, and caps rent increases. I don't want to own sentiment, I want to preserve it. I decline the wedding invitation with a short, polite note, I won't be attending. No scene, no counters, no press. I send it not with malice but with careful distance. There's no thrill in being excluded, only a clear decision that I won't let my worth be assigned from the outside. The plan is in motion, sure and small and steady, and for the first time in a long while I feel like the person in the driver's seat of more than just a car. I introduce myself as Chairwoman Benton and watch his smile change the way a sky shifts when clouds cross the sun. For a second he's off script, like someone who learned to talk to people who clap, not to people who ask hard questions. He recovers, keeps talking, and then offers the heads up the way someone offers a bone to show he's generous. A confidential pointer about a bank's new tech fund and how a certain insider was likely to move funds. He frames it like it's a favor, helpful intelligence for a partner. My mouth tastes of metal at the idea. I only ask one question, is this information public? The room tilts toward him for a beat. My advisor across the table shifts in his chair and says very quietly, it shouldn't be. Parker keeps talking, oblivious to the cliff edge he's approaching. He thinks he's still dazzling the room. His hand brushes the deck like it's a prop that guarantees trust. The air goes still as the idea sinks in. He's just shown he'd trade boundaries for a handshake. I don't frown, I don't shout. I listen and write notes in slow, neat handwriting. Precision matters more than theater in that moment. After the meeting, the advisor pulls me aside and says, do you want me to keep stepping in? He looks tired in a way that feels true rather than performative. I say, no, I need you to keep standing up. He tells me quietly and without fanfare that he's been on my advisory board for months, off the record because it's what I asked. Knowing someone of his experience has chosen to respect my preference for privacy feels like a steady hand at the small of my back. He adds, I won't protect bad judgment. If my nephew wants to be in this business, he learns the cost. There's no bitterness in the words, there's only a line drawn by someone who has seen enough. We don't make a scene, we don't stage a reveal in the conference room. Instead, we record the meeting notes, schedule a formal review with the rest of my board, and set a clear agenda: transparency, accountability, and a reminder that shortcuts don't become policy. Julie texts me later she was waiting outside. You looked like yourself in there. It's the kindest compliment of the week. The advisor's quiet support makes the victory feel like a shared one. It's a network of small truths holding a larger structure upright. The wins stack quietly but surely. The hotel brand signs a partnership for 3 of our conferences, which means rooms are held and dates are booked across their properties. It locks a calendar that makes rescheduling a real headache. When the Marbury's parent company blocks renovation windows, the specific dates Sloan wanted to claim become inconveniently unavailable. Henry, the general manager, handles the logistics with plain language phone calls and an obvious relief that someone is making the planning easier, not harder. He thanks me for the training money we're putting toward staff because it will help them keep their jobs and feel better about their work. Rosa signs the paperwork that secures her trattoria. I write a clause in the offer that keeps her in charge and guarantees her recipes remain hers, no rebranding, no chain concepts leaning in. She laughs like she's astonished I'd do such a thing. You're crazy, kiddo, she says in a way that sounds like approval. Nina, the arts director, sends a voice message I play twice because I don't want to miss the tears in her voice. She's already mapping scholarships and open studio nights that will welcome kids who never thought they'd have a place like that. The note the charity sends back is short and full of gratitude. It's anonymous on paper, but the effect is public in the best sense. We track small results like marks on a ledger that say things are shifting for the better. Hotel staff retention ticks upward because training and fair hours make a difference. The charity puts 3 community classes on the calendar and has students lined up in hours. Rosa's regulars keep showing up and bring friends. None of it looks like a headline stunt. It's the kind of impact that quietly rearranges people's lives. Each move builds leverage without spectacle, and that feels like the kind of victory I want. practical and permanent, not loud and fleeting. But movement attracts attention like light draws moths. The investigative journalist I've been careful around, Tessa Ward, sends a short, precise email that asks about the timing of the donations and whether there's any public link to me. I don't reply immediately. I forward it to Julie with one note: hold. My sister's fiancé, Parker, starts to nudge Sloane harder about controlling me in ways that sound like stage directions. He texts her a line about appearances and asks if she can manage the situation. She replies with short, clipped answers that don't feel like her. At the hotel, staff tell Henry that someone from the Whitmore camp asked whether certain bookings could be moved. Henry told them no, that corporate policy won't bend for family drama. He looks at me with a mixture of gratitude and worry. You can see the line he's walking between guests, schedules, and the boss's office. Daniel calls me in the evening and says, "Publicity's a risk, we should be ready." He's not trying to scare me, he's trying to be smart. Julie reminds him we don't lie and we don't scramble. Rosa's nephew shows up at the trattoria asking too many questions about franchising and big ideas in a tone that smells like a hasty plan to cash in. I tell Rosa to breathe and that I'll have a conversation with him later. The tactic is working, but the quiet of it is now noisy to people who like spotlights. Our small, practical wins have rattled systems built on appearances, and that means the people who profit from a picture-perfect weekend are starting to push back. The pressure isn't violent or public yet, it's small and insistent, like a knock that gets louder in the night. I feel the tug of it and know the fight is far from finished. Sloane's voicemail is sweet and brittle all at once. "Claire, honey, please stop making this harder than it needs to be." Her voice is the one I know, careful, practiced, folded around what she thinks will finish the argument. It's sugar with a razor underneath. Messages start to pile up in odd places. A family friend texts, "Heard you're difficult, didn't think you had it in you." I save it in a folder I've labeled clarity because insults that present as insights sometimes tell you more about the sender than the target. Rumors begin to orbit. I'm jealous, I'm trying to hijack the weekend, I'm making demands. The groom's assistant drops an email requesting a pre-meeting to align narratives, which reads less like preparation and more like damage control. It's a sign they're not preparing numbers, they're preparing talking points. Tessa, the journalist, says she's found photos of me entering buildings that match public records and asks for comment. The squeeze presses in from external sources and from the family, one layered on top of the other like smudges on glass. Instead of answering every whisper, Julie says, "They're fighting you with stories. You need facts that box out spin." The advice is simple and true: facts don't glitter, they steady. I set a formal board review with recorded minutes and a clean agenda so conversations about behavior can't be turned into gossip. I ask the advisor uncle to come prepared with anything relevant. I tell Henry to route any family pressure directly to me and not to his staff. The plan shifts subtly, still careful, still precise, but it's no longer only about leverage. It's about making sure truth can't be easily traded for a prettier picture. I set the board review the next morning and insist on recorded minutes, a clear agenda, and witnesses who won't be tempted to rewrite what was said. I ask the advisor uncle to come with anything he might have that's relevant. I tell Henry at the Marbury to route any family pressure directly to me and to keep his staff out of the crossfire. I start practicing my single, blunt question. "Did you share private decisions to win our business?" I write it in large letters on a yellow pad and tape it where I can see it. Facts, not stories. This becomes the quiet outline of my next week. 2 days after I solidify the plan, a box arrives from Dad. The package is the kind of thing that looks like it's crossed a few hands, taped up, the corners softened, his handwriting deliberate on the label. My name is written in a slow, careful script like someone who's trying not to smudge the ink. Dad calls first. He never likes surprises when there's emotion involved, and tells me he found it while cleaning out the attic. "Thought you might want to see some of Mom's things," he says, and his voice has that small catch that means it mattered to him too. I open the box on my kitchen table, the place where all my smaller decisions get made. Inside, there are photo strips from a fair, church programs with hymns Mom loved, a recipe card with splatters I recognize as her handwriting, and then a thin envelope with my name on it in Mom's looping hand. The envelope is sealed, the paper has that old-school weight to it, the kind that makes you aware of the touch that held it first. My fingers tremble in a way I don't usually let anyone see. The letter inside is dated the month I was 19. It's a scholarship offer, full tuition to the state university I'd wanted, addressed to me. The words are formal and kind, but what stops my breath is a short note folded inside, Mom's habit of tucking little things where she thought they might be found. The note reads, "Proud of you, Claire, can't wait to see your dorm." The ink is faded at the edges where her thumb probably rubbed it. There's a second envelope behind it, and the sticky note on top says, in my sister's handwriting, "Keep this." The paper crinkles under my thumb and my stomach drops. Everything rearranges itself in that moment. I remember the night I found out I didn't get it and Sloane said I should try again next year. I remember the polite, almost disappointed way she told me the family couldn't host any parties for me that summer because it would complicate things. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed thinking I'd failed. The letter proves I hadn't failed. I had been kept out of the start line by someone who stood beside me and closed a gate. I call Dad back and try not to let my voice show the tremor. He says he kept the box because Mom always wanted us to have our things if we ever needed them. I tell him I'll come by and he says he'll put the kettle on. When I hang up, the kitchen seems suddenly louder. The pearls feel heavier at my throat. I walk to Rosa's and sit at the back table with the box open between us, the smell of garlic and tomatoes like a steadying hand. Rosa reaches across and squeezes my wrist without comment. The class of secrecy that kept me small shifts into clear hurt. It's one thing to be underdressed, it's another to be deliberately deferred. The discovery is a clean, quiet wound. It reframes everything Sloane has ever said as an act rather than a remark. It's not only that she judged me, she shaped the path I walked. That knowledge cuts in a way that's both personal and practical. This is no longer just about an invitation. It's about the story Sloane chose to tell about me and how she edited my possibilities. My anger isn't theatrical. It's the slow, steady kind that makes you rearrange furniture in your head so you can stand up straighter. I sit at my kitchen table that night and fold my hands around the pearls. Mom's note is tucked into my wallet like a small talisman. I write a new plan across the top of my notebook in black ink, speak when it matters and make sure the record holds. The board review stays scheduled. The hotel partnership remains in place. The anonymous gift to the arts charity goes through, no plaque, no fanfare, but the scholarships get an explicit clause for public school students, so the kids who never had an in now have an entry. I firm up the Rosa purchase with the clause that keeps her recipes and keeps prices fair. I add one more thing to the plan: I will speak in Milan. I tell Julie I'll accept the honor and ask for a few minutes on stage. If the journalist connects the dots, I say, I'd rather tell the story myself than let someone else stitch it together. Julie looks at me like she always does when I choose the harder, cleaner path. A small half smile that says she'll follow me if I'm steady. I pen a short private note to Sloane: I won't be attending the wedding. I will be speaking this weekend about the work I do and what I value. If you want to talk afterward, I will listen. I don't hit send. I tuck the note into an envelope and slide it into a drawer like a promise. The new vow feels less dramatic and more necessary. Hiding has cost me small things over the years: a seat at an alumni event, a recognition I'd never wanted in a headline but would have liked at a family table. The scholarship is proof that a different life was possible. Now I decide I won't let my choices be made by someone who thinks size is determined by chandeliers. I won't trade my values for a picture-perfect weekend. The vow makes my steps deliberate. I tell Daniel to prepare a straightforward statement for potential press, not defensive language but plain facts. I ask him to be ready for questions about our processes. He frowns at the calendar but nods. He's practical in the way that steadies me. I also tell my advisor uncle what I need on the boardroom day: documents, copies of any email chains, and a willingness to speak to how pitches were handled. He agrees, quietly. I won't cover for poor judgment, he says, and I find something like relief in the bluntness. I don't want a protector who bends the rules for family or staff. I want people who will let consequences be consequences. The vow to be seen is not a call for revenge in the operatic sense. It's a pledge to be consistent, same values in private as in public. Making that pledge loosens some things and tightens others. I feel a light fear, the one that hangs around choices that matter. I also feel an odd clarity. The decision to speak in Milan is not about humility or heroics, it's about owning the work and the ethics behind it. It's about giving the journalist the person she's chasing, but on my terms. It's about letting parents who stood in kitchens and measured worth by kindness see the child they raised stand up for herself. I pack Mom's note with my passport and fold the pearls into my jewelry case. The vow sits in the small of my back like a strap I've tightened and chosen. The next week brings its first real consequence. The advisor uncle, who's been a quiet presence on my board for months, explains over coffee that his support has limits. He won't smooth things for Parker because shielding that sort of mistake would be dishonest. He tells me he can vouch for process and character, but he won't erase a lapse in judgment. It's not unsupportive, it's a kind of integrity I respect. The consequence is practical. My uncle's help comes with the expectation that systems respond to mistakes, not that relationships bury them. Within a day, the groom-to-be's firm issues a bland internal note about prioritizing client service while my board asks for immediate changes to how we review third-party pitches. Daniel emails me with a tight, businesslike message: expect increased scrutiny from partners and prepare for questions. He's worried about the time and energy this will pull away from our work. I understand, attention is expensive. Julie keeps her face calm like a lighthouse. She reminds me that we built structures to handle storms and that this is a storm we planned for in a way. Still, there's a tightening in my stomach. I'd hoped to protect everyone from fallout, to keep my people free of collateral damage. That illusion dissolves when consequences run their natural course. What I'm learning is that integrity costs something even when you do the right thing. The shield I thought I could hold up for staff and family has to be removed to let truth do its work. People will face the results of their choices, and some of those results are hard to watch. The advisor uncle's withdrawal of cover is a painful kind of help, truth without softening. It's what I wanted, but it's different than the quiet protection I'd dreamed up in my head when I imagined being anonymous and kind. I spend an evening walking the block where Rosa's sits, the night air steady and cool. The pearls in my pocket feel heavier than they did a week ago. There's a clarity to the weight now. I can't fix every bruise or stop every rumor, but I can insist that the record is clean and that we respond in ways that match the values I want to run through the firm. When a firm member is suspended pending review and when my board votes for stricter protocols for future pitches, I don't feel triumphant. I feel the steady ache of a person doing what's required, holding people accountable and accepting that even honesty can hurt. Tessa, the reporter, sees me at Rosa's and approaches the back table with a cup of tea like a person who thinks gentle entry buys honesty. "If this is you," she asks, "why hide?" I deflect, the reflex of years, and then I regret the dodge because the question lands like a pebble in a pond and ripples out. Sloane posts photos from a tasting with captions about family, loyalty, and tradition. The words twist in the air as if she's trying to wrap a neat bow around what she's already done. Dad texts a heart emoji at 2 in the morning. It shows up like a small, private flag in the quiet of my phone. I cry then in the kitchen where the house hums and no one sees it but the plant that always thrives on neglect. Privacy shrinks. The life I knitted in small stitches feels exposed at the seams. That exposure turns out to be less about fame and more about being misread by the people who taught me to shrink. I'm not afraid of being known by strangers. I'm afraid of being known by my sister, by friends who measured me in degrees of visible success and who might now decide my choices don't count. Mom's voice is a steady thing in my head: tell the truth softly and stand where you can hear yourself, and I repeat it until it steadies me. I practice the board questions out loud in the apartment, crisp, measured, the way I like to speak when I want to be taken seriously. I rehearse until my voice thins and becomes reliable. I skip a workout one morning just to sleep, skip a reply to a baiting text to avoid a fight that would be mostly old wounds dressed up in new clothes. Julie keeps the calm face she always wears and tells me simply, trust the plan, not the fear. It's a small command, but it's exactly the kind of order that pulls me out of the spiral. The advisor uncle's decision not to shield someone who made a bad call sits with me like a cold truth. It's integrity, yes, but it's also a reminder that I can't protect everyone from consequence and accept that as fair. I've built a team to shoulder work, not to be sacrificed to my desire for quiet. The losses I've counted are practical: more scrutiny from partners, tighter internal controls, the work of consolation for people like Rosa, and for staff who must wear the aftermath of decisions they didn't make. But beneath the practical is a narrower ache, the one that says you're allowed to be who you are and that you don't have to prove your worth to those who'd already decided you weren't enough. And then the clock starts to beat louder. The wedding weekend, the hotel staff training, and the awards night land on the same square on the calendar like a convergence that wasn't planned by me but feels designed for maximum tension. The Marbury finalizes renovation blocks that move rehearsals. The dates Sloan circled begin to wobble. Henry tells me in a low voice that the staff training and our booked conference rooms make it hard to give the family the exact windows they wanted. He can't bend policy without consequences, he can only offer the truth. The journalist, Tessa, emails with a date stamped at the top. She plans to publish early next week and asks for comment by noon tomorrow. Her tone is patient but firm. She's done the slow work and she's ready to tell the story. Parker's assistant has been talking to people who care about narratives. A friend of a friend floats a counter-narrative in a quiet channel, the kind meant to make rumor sound like a reasonable alternative to fact. Daniel calls and says, "This is getting noisy. Partners will want clarity." His worry is practical. He knows how quickly a reputation that's been private can become a thing buyers and partners argue over. He adds that we can't absorb a smear quietly, which isn't dramatic but is true. Julie reminds him we don't lie and we don't scramble. The deadline is no longer a line on a page. It's a skin-deep thing that makes it hard to sleep. I find myself checking my phone at odd hours, waiting for texts that will tell me whether someone has changed a rehearsal, whether a journalist has reached a deadline, whether a rumor has metastasized into something a client will ask about. There's a decision to make that's sharper than earlier ones because the cost is immediate. If we let a narrative take hold, the story shapes itself in a way that's hard to untangle. If we push too hard, we might look like we're staging a spectacle. I stand at that edge for hours, tasting both options like a dish that might be too salty or too plain. I realize the plan must ask for more than precision now. It must ask for timing that's exact. The high-risk bet appears because the pressure is pinning us to a calendar and because people, my sister, Parker, the journalist, are acting like time is a lever they can use against me. So I make the high-risk move. I confirm the board review for the next morning, insist the minutes be recorded, and set an agenda that forces clarity: no side conversations, no off-the-record asides, every point on the record. I tell the advisor uncle to bring any emails or notes that would show who said what and when. I brief Henry on preparation. If family pressure comes, he directs it to me and to my counsel, not to the staff. He thanks me quietly and says he'll keep his team out of the fray. In the same breath, I authorize a $500,000 gift to the Marbury's employee hardship pool. No press, no announcement, just money that helps people pay rent and keep lights on during a weekend where posturing might overshadow paying bills. It's a human move that also changes optics. People matter more than a perfect weekend. I also greenlight underwriting the Children's Hospital Gala that shares the weekend. The funding is practical. It keeps a medical team from canceling and guarantees the event will go forward regardless of social chatter. I send Sloan an invite to volunteer at the hospital with no strings attached because offering service beats offering a seat. It's a public olive branch without condition. I prep my team to be ready for calls for quotes for the journalist who's already said she will print. Julie prints me a single, simple line to use if asked. We operate with transparency and we let process decide. She folds it into a card I carry in my wallet. The clock is louder now because the journalist has an early deadline and because the wedding weekend breathes like a thing that will either go off like clockwork or crack. I ask Daniel to prepare a short, factual statement about our internal review processes and to marshal documents that prove we ask the right questions of partners. He does it quietly, efficiently. The advisor uncle emails me late that night with scanned copies of email chains that show the heads-up messages Parker shared. They're a pale, undeniable thread on a screen. I don't look at them until morning. When I do, my stomach tightens not from surprise but from the cold clarity that comes when a messy thing becomes legible. Then we get the call. The arts charity director leaves a message, voice shaking with gratitude and a little panic. Someone on her board, an ex officio member with wide social reach, has guessed the donor by process of elimination. She's been asked where the money came from, and the questioner has an audience. The director says she'll protect anonymity, but she's honest about the pressure. My phone vibrates and there's a text from Sloan that reads, "You're trying to buy your way into the weekend." The sentence is small and cutting because it's not only wrong in fact, but it echoes an old lie I've carried. That my money is the thing I use when I can't earn love. The journalist leaves a voicemail not with accusation but with something softer. "I believe you're doing good work, that's why I want to tell it right." Her voice is careful and I sense both an offering and a warning. If she's going to tell it right, she'll need my access, my willingness to speak, or else her piece will do what journalism does when a subject won't answer. Stitch together quotes and rumors that end up feeling like a portrait drawn by committee. The loss I feel is of control. The anonymous was never meant to be a test of my humility. It was meant to be a way to do something without wearing it on my sleeve. But now even the generosity is a subject in someone else's conversation, and anonymity smells thin. People read the sign and breathe like they've been given a small gift. A woman at the corner table reaches out and squeezes Rosa's hand. An old man laughs and says he's been eating here since he was 20. The relief on their faces is a kind of currency I can handle. Rosa texts me later a photo of the window with the sign and a string of heart emojis. She writes, "You're a good kiddo," and I tuck the phrase into a folder in my head labeled "Things That Keep Me Steady." Meanwhile, a message arrives through a mutual friend from Parker. "She needs you to fix this, do something." The sentence is both pushy and oddly pleading, like someone who doesn't know how to ask a family member to behave. It lands in my phone like a small accusation. It's not only wrong in its facts, it assumes my role is to tidy up whatever mess his choices make. Dad sends a single heart emoji at 2 in the morning, and the small pulse of his support is its own thing. I cry then in a quiet kitchen where no one sees because all this is exhausting in a way that feels personal and inevitable. The house hums, the plant on the sill breathes, and the pearls at my throat somehow feel both heavy and oddly warm. Standing at the sink with the pearls in my fist and the note from Mom in my wallet, the hard choice appears like a photograph you can't unblur. I write a sentence on a sticky note, big, blunt letters. "I am the leader you've been guessing about, and I won't trade my values for anyone's photo." The phrase looks louder on paper than it felt in my head. I send a quick message to the journalist. "If you attend the awards night, you'll have your quote. No long email, no coyness." I tell Julie we're stepping into the light, no half measures. She breathes out and says, "Then stand tall and be kind." Her voice carries the kind of small counsel that feels like a rope thrown across a river. I fold the sticky note and tuck it in my wallet. It's one thing to plan for leverage and another to plan for truth. The root problem, I decide, isn't the wedding itself, it's the way image has been allowed to count for more than character. That's the thing I want to test. I set the boardroom agenda so it can't be danced around, real projections, clear sourcing, no shortcuts. The exact question I print and place on my yellow pad is simple and sharp. Did you share private decisions to win our business? I want an answer on the record because stories bend and people whisper, but minutes are hard to erase. I ask the advisor uncle to bring whatever he has, emails, notes, anything that shows how pitches were handled. He agrees more quietly than I expect and mentions he'll be frank. I also finalize the $500,000 gift to the Marbury's employee hardship pool. It's anonymous as far as public face, but I make sure Henry knows it lands that weekend. It's not a stunt. It's for people who might find themselves choosing between rent and pride. I underwrite the Children's Hospital Gala that shares the weekend because ensuring the medical event goes on protects families and staff who have worked hard to plan it. The funding isn't publicized. It's a practical move to keep things from being canceled because someone wants a picture-perfect social calendar. I place a clause in the arts charity donation that requires scholarships for public school students, no naming rights, no exclusives. The point is to expand access, not to buy a headline. I also finalize a purchase offer for Rosa's Corner with terms that keep Rosa running the show, keep prices steady, and guarantee staff retention. That small business clause isn't about ownership, it's about preserving a place that keeps people connected to ordinary life. I tell my team, facts, not spin, we'll record minutes, we'll be patient. We'll let process answer the big questions. Moving into position feels like stacking small, deliberate bricks. I rehearse my boardroom tone until it's calm and clear, no heat, no theatrics, the voice I use when I want people to listen. I pack my grandmother's pearls into a small pouch. There's ritual in feeling their cool weight when I walk into a room. I fold Mom's letter and slip it into my passport case so it's with me as ballast. I write a short note to Dad. I'll call you after the weekend. I'm okay, and then I fold the paper and put it in my bag. I deliver a simple card to Sloan, no attendance, no scene, wishing you peace. It's a short, quiet gesture that leaves space for a different kind of conversation later. I promise Rosa I'll come back next week with news and a plan for a small sign celebrating 50 years on the corner. I tell Julie to lay out the printed question on every seat and to have the recorder ready. She nods and says she'll be at the back with a stopwatch and a calm face. Practicalities fall into place with a kind of satisfying click. I confirm Henry knows to redirect any family pressure to me, and he thanks me for taking that off his plate. Daniel prepares a tight statement about our processes, simple, factual language that won't feed gossip. The advisor uncle emails scanned copies of relevant emails late the night before, and I read them until the words stopped shaking. The plan is surgical now, it's not about spectacle. It's about forcing a choice between appearances and the kind of clean work that actually helps people. On the morning of the meeting, I arrive early and lay printed copies of the one question on every chair. The recorder is on the table, a small red light like an eye that refuses to blink. I ask for recorded minutes and for the meeting to start on time, no side conversations, no off-the-record asides. The groom-to-be arrives with a thick deck, all glossy slides and practiced smiles. He sets it down, a prop meant to smooth the room back into easy conversation. I don't open the deck, I leave it closed like an unnecessary present. The advisor uncle takes a seat 2 chairs down, a file folder within easy reach. Daniel opens the meeting with an even tone. We're here to discuss process and integrity. Julie sits at the back with a stopwatch and a small, steady face that reads like a metronome. I note the water carafes, the stack of legal pads, the quiet way the clock's second hand moves. It's a small ritual of control that helps me keep my voice measured. If I wobble, Julie promised she'd whisper Pearl, and that tiny signal is a comfort. Then, with the room arranged and the question in every seat, we begin. I ignore a baiting text from Parker's assistant about mutual benefit. I close my laptop on a long spreadsheet I could spend the night tweaking and make myself a cup of tea instead. Julie sits at my kitchen table with a legal pad and draws a small dot next to every statement we plan to make public, facts we can prove, timelines we can show, people who can testify. If they want a story, give them structure, she says. Don't give them the chaos. I breathe to slow the heat behind my voice, and she slides a small ribboned card across the table with my one-line statement printed on it. We operate with transparency and let process decide. I fold the card and tuck it into my wallet. The ritual helps. Neatness calms the part of me that wants to shout. I delete 3 drafts to Sloan that were more about old pain than what I need now. I send instead a single brief card wishing you peace, no barbs, no counters. I give the radio a wide berth that afternoon. Music makes me think in melodies, and I need thought that's blunt and clear. Julie practices the timing with me, 5 seconds to answer if a reporter calls, 2 sentences max, then pass to Daniel. We rehearse until the responses are muscle memory. It's not theater, it's survival. If I wobble, Julie will say, "Pearl," our cue to slow my breath and remember my center. The word is ridiculous and sacred and works. Then I put on the pearls, feel their cool, smooth weight, and head to the room. The door closes behind me like a punctuation mark. I stand by the closed conference room door a long minute before I walk in. The pearls are in my palm, the card with my line folded in my pocket. There's an odd smell in the room, paper, coffee, someone's cologne faint in the air, and the red light on the recorder looks like an eye. I set the folder on the table, smooth the papers, and notice the clock at the far wall. It ticks in a steady, ordinary way that helps keep me ordinary when all else wants to be performance. I lay the printed question across the table so everyone can see it. Did you share private decisions to win our business? Simple. Clear. I ask that minutes be taken and recorded. I request that phones be set to airplane mode. We start on the minute. Parker arrives with a deck whose glossy pages promise a story he's practiced. He sits, smiles like a boy expecting applause, and opens with the easy charm of someone used to getting rooms to tilt toward him. He laughs too often and tells a story about momentum that sounds rehearsed. I listen, I breathe. When he gets to the part where he talks about industry gossip and insider color, I close my eyes for a count of 2 and then open them wide. The advisor uncle slides a slim packet of printed emails across the table like bricks settling into mortar. They're dated and plain, and the edges of the paper feel heavier than they should. Parker's color drains a little. The practiced smile phrase, he says lightly, "Everyone does it." It's the kind of shrug that's meant to normalize something that shouldn't be normal. The room hears the claim and pauses. Daniel leans in and says simply, "We don't do that." The advisor uncle reads out an email thread that shows the heads up passed on as a feather to impress a prospect. The words are quiet, which makes them sharper. Parker falters, then tries to joke, but the sound misses the beat. The recorded minutes capture the exchange precisely. No one needs to yell, the facts do the heavy lifting. My board recommends suspension and oversight. The advisor uncle says it plainly, let him learn or let him leave. The decision lands without celebratory noise. It's a clean consequence that makes the point without spectacle. Later that week, the bright hall where I stood earlier that night exists in a different register. I'm on stage under theater lights, and the hum of the room is the same low electric thing that makes a crowd feel like weather. The host's mic breathes, the velvet ropes glint, and Tessa Ward, the reporter, lifts her recorder from the front row like someone drawing breath before a question. I feel the weight of the pearls cool at my throat. The envelope I'd held that evening is long gone, but the memory of its weight helps me steady my voice. She asks, clear and steady, "Are you the mystery leader behind the fund everyone's been whispering about?" The question lands in the space between my hands. For years, I avoided that moment, kept my name quiet because I thought anonymity let the work speak for itself. Now the room folds around the question like a building opening to a view. I answer, yes. I'm the leader you've been guessing about. My voice is not a shout and it's not a whisper, it's a fact. I say that I chose to be quiet because I wanted the work to matter more than my name, and then I add what feels like a promise. I won't trade my values for anyone's photo, not this weekend, not ever. The applause is not a stadium roar, it's the sound of people relieved to hear the truth. The journalist smiles like someone who wanted honesty, not spin. The producer at the wings breathes out. The light makes the stage warmer than usual, and the pearls feel exactly like armor and memory at once. The immediate outcomes come faster than I expected in certain ways and slower in others. I text Sloan, I won't fix what he did, but I'll be here when you want to talk about what matters. It is short and not cruel. The Marbury announces that their employee hardship pool has received a donation. Henry tells me they chose to honor the intent and keep the donor private while letting the money do its work. The hospital gala is fully funded quietly, and staffers who'd been worried about canceled plans breathe easier. Nina, the arts director, posts new class schedules, and within hours students start signing up. Rosa texts a photo of her neon sign with a small banner below it reading "Protected and Proud," and her message says, "Thank you, kiddo," with heart emojis scattered like confetti. Parker's suspension is announced internally and then privately to clients. The firm releases a neutral note about reviewing processes. The advisor uncle tells me later that letting him carry the consequence himself was the only honest thing to do. The journalist publishes a careful piece that quotes me directly and leaves space for the work rather than the gossip. My name trends for a day, brief, sharp, and then we let it pass. I don't chase the attention, I let the results hold. Scholarships awarded, staff supported, a small restaurant saved. Each outcome feels like a stitch mended in public for the quiet things I care about. My sister's messages slow, then soften. She volunteers at the Children's Hospital after the gala and sends me a photograph of paint on her dress, a small, private act that feels like apology without the word. Parker starts his suspension. His uncle steps back and lets him learn the hard lessons that don't belong to anyone else. The hotel staff sends me a group photo and new training shirts. Henry's note reads, "It mattered," and I put it on my fridge like a small medal. Tessa's article lands without sensationalism. She quotes me directly and leaves no space for the rumors to do their damage. People who used to measure me by attendance at partner dinners now ask about the programs we funded. Some old family friends stop calling, others call to apologize. Privacy shrinks. There are a few more grocery store photos, a polite hello in a line, but the life I wanted to protect still breathes. I let the trending die down. My name being known for a day doesn't change the work we do, it only makes it a little harder to be anonymous. I frame Mom's letter and put it on my kitchen shelf. The ache of what was lost when I was 19 feels quieter now, because the choice I made lets me stand where I can both do the work and meet the people I love without pretending to be less than I am. There was another cost that felt softer and sharper at once. People I'd known in easy roles had to learn to see me differently. Some did it kindly, others needed more time. Being recognized at the grocery store or asked for a photo in the park was oddly intimate and a little wearying. My piece changed into a version that included being asked for interviews while I baked or politely stopped for quick pictures while buying basil. I missed the anonymity that let me be nothing special on ordinary mornings, but I didn't miss shrinking to be someone else's good photo. The new life is fuller and messier. I paid in fewer private moments and more honest mornings. That cost felt worthwhile when I saw a scholarship recipient's handwriting on an application, when Rosa texted a picture of customers laughing in a corner that still smelled of garlic, when a nurse sent a message thanking us for keeping their clinic open. Those moments stitch the cost into something that matters. I sit at a small table at Rosa's corner with a plate of ziti and my laptop closed. The neon hum in the window is steady and soft. The room fills with the low, ordinary music of dinner-hour conversation. I take off my grandmother's pearls and set them beside the brass keys to the trattoria I now help protect. They glint in the warm light, and for a second the pearls look like a bridge between who I was and who I am. I whisper without ceremony, "I'm not hiding anymore. It's not a proclamation to a crowd. It's a line I tell myself and the people who matter most. It feels like an ending and a beginning all at once. If you've ever had to fight for your worth with family or work, share your story in the comments. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me for more true-to-life stories where standing up gets you closer to who you want to be.